this week. I would say their game wasn't amazingly clean, but they still found a win. And I think that they were a little bit, you know, trying to shake the rust off because they hadn't quite fully kind of reset and recalibrated after the European Masters.
Particularly what they did in terms of that recalibration for me was the laning phase. Their laning phase was absolutely monstrous because you looked at particularly Chasey in that top side. We saw a gangplank ban there. In fact, there were a couple of bans towards that top side between both teams, but particularly that gangplank for Chasey was absolutely absurd, beating down even Kerberos, right? Who we know to be a strong 1v1 top laner. Speaking of beating down, though, Kasing might be in for a bit of a beating as Ericsson.
Oh no!
Seeing him.
They get the slows off. Ericsson only going to get a single auto attack in as doesn't quite go to plan.
So he actually didn't quite manage. It just actually misstepped on that sidestep rather that slow. But what we do see now is both of these teams looking for this level 1 information. This is something that we've seen be very important with higher end teams. Sort of a lot of MSI, jungle tracking becomes very, very important. And what did we say immediately off the bat on our end of things? Saying, actually, this Lee Sin and LeBlanc will be very important in how they manage to get things rolling. If Kriox and Zero are not going to... Well, they're not going to be contended on this, but they're going to be seen. It's still, again, it just potentially forces Kriox's hands. He really wants to be unexpected and off a vision wherever he can help it.
Alrighty, well, we are into the game. You can see both junglers are starting on the top side of the map, which means they could be clearing down. I'm curious to see the interactions of this bot lane. Obviously, we know these fasting center lanes. We've seen them time and time again. But we haven't really seen too many of them. Obviously, we haven't had that much time on this patch. We've seen a couple of people whip out the fasting center of a couple of different things. It'll be interesting to see how this lane actually goes. You know, if it feels like there's going to be any major differences in it, or, you know, if it's kind of the fasting center we know and love. Maybe not love. Love.
No, and accept exists, yes. Unless you're really burying your head in the ground about that one. But Senna has really come up to the fore in this particular patch. It is a much slower early game, even if you do get lane control. Put it this way, last patch, you go against this duo lane of the Zyra and the Karma, you get shoved in, you get dove on that level 3, or you get forced off of waves. Your game becomes very hard to stabilize in the early game. It's a lot easier to survive under turret, not get dove, and make sure you're in the early game than compared to that last patch.
Well, there goes the cage by Attila to make sure not going to get too heavily traded onto. Obviously, this mid lane is one to watch as Ericsson feeling a little bit of those extra resistances from that electrocute trade onto Tempt. But, you know, we are only level 2. It is only early days, but I am going to keep my eyes on Ericsson because I think this isn't a lane you can just sit back in. Well, you do need to be very proactive on this LeBlanc here. Otherwise, you know, you're into a zip. He'll just mega shove you in, and you'll do nothing.
And, you know, I mean, we've both been playing for a long time at this point. We've both been LeBlanc players. You've probably got a little more experience than myself being a main of that champion. But particularly the Azir has sometimes fallen prey in the mid-game. Again, when you can get very destructive mid-jungle combos. The question for me is not just Ericsson in the 1v1, it's what happens with comboed up damage.
Oh, Merv's going to take a fair amount of damage. Good cage comes out from Attila. So Ember not going to be in too much trouble here, and this is that proactivity we were looking for. Ericsson does miss out on the chains, and the kick also goes wide. So Tempt doesn't have to burn anything. Wave will push into Ericsson, but Ericsson, you know, running low on pots, only really has that biscuit. So this is actually a pretty good time for Tempt now just to kind of bully Ericsson as much as possible.
That was really good. That was actually really well played, because when you gank Azir, often what you actually end up doing is taking away his mana pool. You're getting your WEQ combo, actually very high mana. Can he do it a second time at this point? You can see he's very low, can't even Q away. Yeah,
they do miss the chains though, again from Ericsson, so again, burning through that mana pool, like you said, but Ericsson's not really able to achieve too much. And this also now means that Mervs has to play way more careful in this lane because he's on his lonesome. And X7, luckily, are going to be slowly pushing this wave into him so you can get the scraps of what gets forced towards him. But you can already see, looking at the farm leads, it's starting to build up in X7's favor bot side.
It's not often we return to things that we've said at 4 minutes into the game, because we're talking about, okay, Vanir probably need to start making these big map movements, use their winning mid-jungle 2v2, that pushing bot lane, they have to make plays happen around the map. They tried to make something happen in mid. They're trying to go towards bot now again. Kriox trying to use this window of time.
Look for the kick, not going to land it. It's just a It's a comedy of errors, unfortunately, from Vanir. Every time they go for these ganks, the move itself isn't wrong. It's just
the right play.
Little plays going wrong. They miss out on those key abilities, and then that's it. They burn maybe some mana from the enemy team, but that's going to be all they're going to be able to get. On the other side, MC's recognizing this constant action for Kriox and is moving in, stealing away camps. Has been spotted out by that ward. Ericsson has plays down, but there is a lead building up between the junglers.
So there are so many implications from this, because I look at this composition, I say, actually, if you don't do anything early as Vanir, and they have tried, but that have failed, you are falling behind in your immediate power that you can really put out. And there's an opportunity cost. As you're saying, you're losing waves bot when your support roams away. You're losing camps when your jungler moves out from his own jungle too. X7 picking up the pieces. And honestly, this is something of a hallmark we saw from the spring iteration of this team. I'm thinking about some of the games that they played against even their first game versus Carmine Core in the group stage at EU Masters. Played very well on the defensive. Let's play on the defensive again. Blowing summoners this time.
Good flash coming out from Attila to make sure they're not going to get caught into Merbs. He just eats the snare, and that's kind of going to be it. It's Creox just going to jump over to the Dragon and actually look to start it up here, but interesting choice considering the pressure that is actually being kind of not really gained for Vanir. So it's not like they're working too hard of a pushing lane here. Wave will shove in, but Merbs realistically just wants to reset here. So Creox gonna finish this Dragon up, and MC didn't really have a good read on the players. Merbs almost gets snared up. Dragon will be secured for the side of Vanir, so at the end of the day, they're gonna be okay with that.
But you look at the side of X7, and even at this point into the game, where you look at, okay, again, this bot side of the map, which typically you're expecting to make plays, you're losing something. To only lose one Dragon, X7 are actually very happy with how this game is going right now. I mean, have to see, of course, what happens around particularly the Herald. I think that feels like it's not the last chance for Vanir to do something. It's not like this team comp completely falls off a cliff. But once you allow Veigar to get out of early lane, and they're already ahead in CS, when you let this Azir set up around an objective, Vanir's options and their strengths aren't really on the same level of power as they are in this early game, which they're currently not capitalizing on.
Yeah, I think you got to keep in mind is LeBlanc can be strong late game, but that requires LeBlanc to actually, be ahead, to be able to translate that lead from lane into the rest of the map and kind of set a team up and then be relevant. But hasn't really been able to do too much there. Bot lane, like you said, CS lead is starting to build up, and Attila relatively unchallenged. Kasing just collecting souls left, right, and center as well. I do have my worries because you're playing to the likes of Veigar, infinitely scaling. You're playing into Azir, not infinitely scaling, but a scaling champion.
Not as close as it gets for people who don't actually have a stacking mechanic.
Exactly.
That's actually going to be a big problem for LeBlanc as well, because LeBlanc, yes, does poke out. I'm actually wondering when you have the Aerie likely going towards something like a Leandries, that tends to be what Azir goes towards now. If you actually jump into the Azir and he gets a Q off on you, even that play pattern, which in mid-game is probably what you're waiting for, gets a little bit dangerous to play around. And at that point, you start to have to think about, okay, if poke's not going to work, we can't play it slow. What do we do after that point? Do we have to find the Miracle Lee Sin on combos onto the backline? Again, we're already thinking about these extra modes of play that Vanir have to think about because they're not getting these early game leads to play through what the comp would really like to do.
I'm seeing a rotation here from Vanir. So remember, up into the mid lane once again to see if they can find something onto Tempt. Temp's still got both those summoner spells though, and actually it looks like the rotation is to try and get some pressure here for this Rift Herald. Creox will spot it out, Zambera looking just to take out this ward for now, and feels like Vanir threatening is enough for X7 to just play respect there. Ericsson gets a cheeky electrocute trade-off onto Tempt as well. And Vanir, actually lovely rotations here because they've been able to force this wave in bot side, and Merb's now making his way up, so Vanir should have the man advantage.
Okay, no teleport on Attila. Look at the Xayah, look at these fights.
Intake coming in from Creox. They get the slowdown. MC's going to have to Heartbreaker away for the moment as the kick gets eaten up by Kasing. And that should just be it for now. Merbs has made his way over. Wave shoving in. And Kasing actually going to get slowed down. Ericsson going to force the flash out. He's going to flash in himself and almost finds the kill. Ericsson finds first blood.
Last tick of the Ignite. Damage calculations working out in favor of Vanir. And we did say, hey, honestly, this Herald looking quite important for Vanir. They need to find something around it. Is it an explosive fight? No, not quite yet. But a kill onto that LeBlanc. Already talked about that being a very important play pattern for Vanir as this game goes on. And also getting it a Herald as a result of that one skirmish just allows that door to be open just a little bit longer, allowed him to play around this point of power. And of course, this starts off with Creox really making his way onto MC, and Creox has been one of the best individual performers in the NLC so far. Stunning first couple of games, even though it wasn't a win for Vanir versus JDXL. Creox made it a question to be asked, even though, of course, JDXL are currently undefeated, looking like the best team in our league. And see again that Vanir, no slouches when it comes to taking on these top tier teams.
I love that. It was actually just a QR Ignite auto from Ericsson just to get the Electrocute proc and also just to guarantee you proc the Sigil. Really nice there from Ericsson, understanding the damage, even through the heal and the Q from Kasing. And that is that kill we were talking about. Ericsson does kind of need to be active, does need to be able to set up, and so far has been just kind of subjugated to dealing with this mid lane, and Azir going to be pretty comfortable constantly shoving the lanes in. Got the Merc Treads as well, so Temp should be pretty comfortable versus Ericsson here. Yeah,
it should be comfortable, but the question is now, and with that extra kill, does that allow Ericsson an extra degree of freedom to start getting away from the map of his own regard? Desk was actually saying that Ericsson, much more of a control mage player. In fact, I remember Ericsson's Orianna and champions like that was playing down in Div 2 in this last split. Even with that, does seem familiar and comfortable with that role right now. Playing on this LeBlanc, it is different from Orianna, it is different from those class of champions, and now being one of the big centerpieces of what Vanir wants to be doing with this composition. Eyes will inevitably still be on them, where some eyes have just not been, is that top lane. Just keeps coming around towards this mid.
That was big. He's going to have to get caught out by the chains. They land the kick as well. They'll get a little bit additional damage out, but not feeling it thanks to MC. Probably just saves Temp's life there. That was a very aggressive Q. Temp was punished instantly for it.
There are a lot of things that Azir laners have picked up over the period of time since he's been released. You can't always put all your W's down, even though that's a lot of your damage. You can't always Q aggressively. Temp's been getting away with it, is up in farm by a decent amount at this point, and is still in lane for all of these big fights, even though, of course, they lost that first blood and until forcing the issue. Again, the only reason X7 can look for those kind of plays is because Temp has actually been rock solid in lane and hasn't given anything. Vanir have looked for him.
This dragon could be big here. Temp's actually going to get a little bit of damage from the chains and the sigil from Ericsson. Ericsson about to get ultimate up, but you can see everybody is on the bottom side. Everybody is fighting for this dragon.
Just a lot of damage.
Doing so much damage to everybody. His actually gets chunked out by Chasey and Tempt a little bit. And Vanir, they are working on lowered health bar, so they may just look to give this up. But here comes the Ornhorn. The knockup's going to land only onto Kasing, into the railgun as well. Zambera is on the front line and is going to tank everything. No flash available. Will just lose their life to Chasey. Dragon secured in the meanwhile, and Merms has to throw out the Featherstorm to get away. Vanir just not playing respect and looking not to back out as Ericsson gets the ignite off. He finds the kill. Ericsson does it again. Perfect play on the LeBlanc here.
It'd just been lovely if that had happened 30 seconds earlier, because Vanir, they're getting to this point where we said they'd be in trouble. When X7 can set up at an objective, play around choke points, play around terrain, get that Veigar forcing flashes, Azir doing damage, and while Vanir walk away with a kill, they lose one of their own, they lose the dragon, so they're not even stacking that early into the game. X7, again, feels like they're just very happy with the pace of this game and where the objectives and gold is falling.
It's really big they got the dragon as well, because it denies the potential for an early soul from Vanir. It's going to be an Ocean Soul as well, so on a patch like this, on the durability patch, on a team that wants to be scaling, the Ocean Soul is going to be super impactful. The amount of sustain they're going to be able to get, and you were talking about it earlier, if LeBlanc doesn't become the assassin, you can kind of default to the poke.
What happens when you have Ocean?
You have Ocean, yeah, you can't poke, because Zambera just also getting poked out by Attila in the meanwhile, as Rift Herald's going to go down mid, trying to catch Tempt out on the reset, but Tempt's got teleport, so this is going to be a very, very hard force here for Vanir. Just a couple of plays.
A little bit like a dead karma there.
Yeah, that might just be a dead karma, unfortunately. Does look for the tether, has got a form to steal away. Here's Merps, misses out on the feathers, and MC jumped over the wall with a flash there on the two Merps. It looks like Merps just flashed over the wall to safety. Meanwhile, the charge goes off, and now Bjergsen and Ericsson looking to see if they can find a little cheeky assassination for themselves, but spotted out by the Scryer. Vanir, all they really gain is dead support and a couple of plates.
What were they even aiming for, though? That's what you have to go back to. And they were trying to, again, maybe use that Herald in mid, but also trying to secure vision. They're starting to lose that now. Again, I don't think it's the wrong instinct to say, we need these wards. We need to be able to jump into river. Honestly, we need to be jumping over river, getting behind this enemy formation, which can zone control so well. The X7, they're very on it. They don't let them do that. And again, X7, they're sad at 1 and 2, had a poor first week, but this is a team which we do rate very highly. These are our current champions. Yes, they had a bit of a duff week 1. They were dealing with players flying back and forth from career, but this is why we were saying they're still dangerous. They're still this team which feels like could really take down so many of these top contenders in the league and be up there themselves.
I do worry looking at the items. As we're approaching that 15-minute mark, you can see the Triforce, the Divine Sunderer, the Everfrost already in. Yeah, you've got the Gale Force. Yes, you've got the Frozen Fist as well available to Hizero, but like other than that, they're not really working with too much here. You can see there's a big deficit between the junglers, and MC having a level on Kriox. Remember, on this patch, all those extra resistances go with levels. So levels are very valuable, more so than, you know, previous patches, just because of how much tankier every level makes you.
And again, if we're going to bring this back to certain people's perspectives, it stops your big burst combos from your big engages, from the Ornn, the Lee Sin, the LeBlanc jumping forward. LeBlanc on her own, not going to have that assassination potential. X7 have a very stable position on the map right now. They're going to have a point where they can just be very happy with their individual lanes. When they start grouping up, they actually don't feel like that under that much threat. And even if they are, they have the center to bail them out if worst comes to worst. So Vanir, now you have to start playing around with some more unconventional approaches to these. I don't think it works for Vanir if they go towards a grouped up X7. I think that's where they end up losing a lot of these players. But what other options do they have right now? Looks like X7 going to get themselves a free Herald, which is something which Vanir don't really want them to have.
No, it looks like they're not even going to attempt to try and
have a choice.
They
don't want to have it.
They were caught, you know, on a bad reset there for Vanir, and that means X7 are going to be able to pick up this dragon. And it does feel a little bit like, you know, our previous champions, well, our defending champions have kind of got over that slump, have recovered and looking a lot clean. This game so far looks cleaner than what we saw in game 1 of this week.
And the cleanness for me from that last game was on laning phase. I think that was a huge factor in this game too, because it might not always look like the flashiest thing when you're playing effectively a nullifying style of League of Legends, where you think, okay, a lot of the big plays from X7 were Temp, surviving so much pressure. It has been Chasey, winning out in that 1v1 very heavily, taking the solo turret. Bot lane, getting themselves up to CS advantages in a lane which should be pushed in early. It feels like X7 just very happy to play around their individual strengths and just be so stable, which allows them to unlock this composition later on. So that laning phase for me really has led to so many bonuses for what we know to be such a high-level team in the NLC.
You see Merp have to pop the Gale Force. Dragon spawning up in 9 seconds, and Vanir, they still have this on. They still have this teamfight capability, but the scary thing is Chasey's gnarred out, so they have to be super careful about just getting slammed into a wall. Will run out soon as Merv's still trying to collect this farm underneath the tower. Has the cage thrown down by Attila, so basically free poke as well to follow up. This dragon, they're trying to deny it. They find a cheeky knock-up onto Kasing. Kasing loses a lot of health. Ericsson is on him. The Ornhorn going to do a lot of work as he jumps into the double shift. Ericsson finds himself one already, and they're continuing the fight off. Merv puts down the Featherstorm. Attila's taking a lot of damage, but what the divide by Temps? He's ripping through everyone. Kriox is looking for MC, but he's unable to do so. Double kill picked up for Attila. Make that a triple kill. And Chasey chase down Zambera and secures another one for himself.
What started off as what seemed to be a great position for Vanir is just going from bad to worse.
Ericsson, he's in so much trouble. Able to use a little bit of the movement to get away. Attila can't quite catch him out as Ericsson is going to jump over the wall. Getting out with a sliver of health, but it doesn't matter. X7 will take the second dragon for themselves.
And Hero plays on the defense again. It's not in the same situation of trying to deal with, you know, the laning advantages that Vanir were trying to garner for themselves. It's in the big team fights, and this is so good an example of how difficult it is to deal with all the zone control, all of the peel back mechanics that X7 have to play with, get themselves everything they want in that. I'm gonna go back into the replay to see how all of this came out again. It looks initially fairly bad for X7. Kasing, not really meant to be up that far. Gets removed from the playing field. Not too much of a second thought, but at this point you think, okay, take it down the center, that's awesome. Yeah, well, Temp still has a massive amount of damage. Attila gets a second cage down, gets to peel off that Lee Sin from cleaning up the back end of the fight, and X7, really, really impressive stuff on the defensive foot again.
Yeah, really nice. We are seeing, you know, Ericsson have his glimmer of hope. This is the star player right now for the side of Vanir on this LeBlanc. Able to do a lot of work, but I think it was a bit of scattered calls there. I think if they decided to focus MC and take him out and then continue the fight, that might have gone a bit differently. But Ericsson decided the easiest path, one-shot Kasing, take him out. But unfortunately, Temp, just really, really good flank. And I think more than anything, it comes down to just the vision. They weren't aware of where Temp was. They were caught off guard because of the vision. And X7 just punished them for it beautifully.
And it feels like there's a hint of desperation in there too, right?
Yeah.
Where they're like, oh, we've caught the center. We have to take this. This is our one winning fight. There was no real other option for Vanir to say, yeah, we'll try and have a second go of it. They didn't have the cooldowns to continue it at that point. And if you look up towards that lovely momentum meter, it looks like the analysts in the back room also agreeing with the state of the game after this point. Desperation from Vanir, culminating in a side lane play. But as we have seen the entire game, Tempt just always in a position to quickly slide out to safety.
It's very hard to catch this Azir. The Herald's actually
playing that well, certainly.
In the top lane as well. And X7 looking at some pressure up here. Vanir, though, is on them to try and defend. Obviously, this tower has already fallen to Chasey. So it's that tier 2, you know, that one with that extra gold in the pocket. Zero not quite close enough, does have teleport if they decide they want to throw them down. It looks like Vanir, they're gonna stick their feet down here. They're gonna try and look for a defense. Zero closing in with that Ornhorn available, but it looks like the charge is coming out no matter what. The tower, though, will hold as the railgun comes out. The tower gonna be able to survive another day, but here comes the Ornhorn from Zero. Gonna get the knock up onto just MC. MC being chased. Heartbreak away. Chains are on. Loses a lot of health, but Tempt's able to come over the wall to make sure his jungler is out scot-free. And Vanir, that's going to be all they're going to be able to do.
Oh, that's
their
such a hard situation. Because that was potentially a moment where they could pounce. Because when you push in very far across the map, where you say, okay, the first tier turret's down in that top lane, but the second one's fairly deep in, you're actually walking over areas of the map as X7 at that point, but you don't have wards. We talked about where that vision was so important in that dragon fight. Potentially, Vanir could have picked someone off or get themselves an engage as X7 pushed too far. Vanir couldn't find that answer. They committed to it, and they lose 2 turrets. Well, not the 2 turrets, actually. The top one didn't fall, but they managed to lose that mid lane and turret. Still got the Herald charge on the top side. And Vanir, again, feels like they are just running out of options. It seems so inevitable after those early ganks and those early roams didn't work out for them, and they're struggling to piece together those unorthodox, more smoke and mirrors plays to catch X7 off guard. They've been so poised this game so far.
Yeah, X7 definitely playing very crisp. And Vanir, you know, they did draft into this. I think there is that to say. It seemed like they understood their win conditions.
Well, they tried to play through it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just, you know, little misplays. And once again, Tempt, honestly eating up so much attention of Vanir and not really being punished for it at all. There's that pink ward down there. Tempt's going to step up, and it looks like maybe now's the time for them to pounce, but they're not completely content on contesting anymore, as MC making his way over, spotted out on the vision, but Vanir, they're just gonna have to back off because they are now the ones being hunted. Ericsson overstaying a little bit
about that
here.
vision.
And oh no, Creox has to jump away. MC misses out on the tether. Teleport's coming in. So they bring in Chasey, catching on to Zero, who's able to move away for now, and it looks like X7, they actually want to turn the tempo up a little bit here in this top side. They don't really have the wave to work with, though. So it looks like that's just going to be it. A bunch of teleports used and nothing gained.
I mean, at that point, X7 are just sat there saying, well, you've used your teleports. You've used your one real X factor to try and, again, break open these formations. But what's going to happen after this point? Got a dragon coming up in 30 seconds. We have vision control established by X7 actually on both sides of the river at this point. They've returned to that top lane after the earlier Herald charge, put down wards at that point. That allows Chasey to push in, control that side of the map. Then they go in, go towards this bot side, and Vanir really don't have many options left.
Oh, Chris just about dodging out there, but he's lost so much health already. Shield's coming in from Zambera just to make sure, but the Ornhorn's coming down. They've used the chase, they've used the knock-up. The CC chain's big, and Attila has to flash away. Creox not going to follow up for now, but Ericsson coming in on the flank. The cage is down, that's big. There's Chasey also coming in, but his Narbar's almost filled up. And it is going to make life super hard for Vanir to step into this Nar
they're
here.
into a choke now. Look at this, they just cannot enter this river. The soldiers are there. That's going to be the garrison of the river. X7 putting down. Looks like they're still wanting to commit to this.
I don't know how they can't. There's no way. Dragon goes down, and Vanir, it just feels like they're rolling over because they can't deal with the zone control X7 have put together.
And X7, I mean, we've talked about Tempt a lot, but that's also Attila putting down the cages. It's Kasing making sure that the roots are on target, and there's Qs are keeping people topped up, and they just shut the gates on Vanir. It's not an explosive game, but it is still dominant. It's still actually very high level. X7 not giving options to Vanir. We're talking about this at a couple of objectives now, saying, oh, they don't really want to give this up, but how the heck do they contest? Looking at this Baron now, Vanir don't have those teleports, they don't have a Call of the Forge God, and they don't even look like they know it's going down.
Well, it feels they have an inkling, but they're too slow. They're too scared to step up. And there it goes. Baron, Nasha taken down. Chasey comes in with a Gnar, not going to land it. And Vanir just left scratching their heads going, how do we come back to this game?
been asking that for quite a long time at this point. In X7, they get themselves that last dragon in this phase of play. This comes from that vision control they set up. They get one kick, looking towards Kasing.
Creox has to flash out. He can't even get the insect. The CC chain's too big. Ericsson comes over the wall. Temp has to use the stopwatch. The Ornhorn comes down as well. Creox able to survive for now. MC gets knocked up. Ericsson's back at the wall. Flashes over. Mervs has only just joined into the fray as Ericsson jumps back into the wall again. Big old jump coming in. But Attila comes and brings the damage as Ericsson's just about able to survive for a little longer, but Attila will still take him down. And X7 continue the chase. The cage doesn't quite hit. Mervs full HP though as Tempt is coming in on the flank. This could be huge. That divide may just end the game. Tempt's coming in. Already used it. Gets the Tempt. Gets one for the moment as Mervs gets the feathers. He gets himself another kill as Mervs is going so low. Zero's able to survive thanks to Creox. They get the knock up onto MC, but his Heartbreaker is doing too much work. Creox being chased down. The special more into the cage. Into another kill as Chasey takes him down. Railgun will not finish off Mervs as the inhibitor will fall down.
It's not just going to be the end of the game quite yet, but X7, so clean, so poised and Vanir, they actually gave it a good shot in that last fight, but again, the weight is just so hard to carry from this kind of disadvantage. X7 don't even feel the need to reset. They get to push in yet another wave with that hard-earned Baron buff and get to turn onto the map. It does feel like that last phase of play seems to be the last gasp from Vanir. Really not sure how you can last out Baron buff from it's already such a oppressive team.
There was a moment from Mervs there, but Mervs just wasn't here in the fight. Look at him on the map. He doesn't get here until it's way too late, and by that point, his team are chunked. There's nothing they can do.
And that's a really good point to bring up, because they could have probably stopped and taken that mid lane out of turret. They maybe could have left on to push in on the top side too. We talked about X7 kind of forgoing those resets after this play happened. Well, what happens actually if you give up 2 outer turrets on this side? Probably wouldn't be that much from Vanir, but it's still a little bit of golden pocket. They try and go for a high roll, and they get punished for it. That feels like the story of Vanir's game. They've gone for the more aggressive early plays, but X7 playing so well on the defense, and even with Mervs having one of those, we haven't seen the Gale Force Sire for a little while. It's good to see it back, being able to reposition those feathers. Nearly comes out with that great end to a team fight, but just can't quite do the heavy lifting with the amount of gold he's got in pocket.
Maybe if that had worked, there was a world where Mervs could have come back, but
maybe
it just wasn't quite close enough. Has now got the Typhoon upgraded.
Oh yes, the ornaments.
So the ornament is an area, but I mean, would you take half an item over infinite scaling?
I think I would probably take, you know, the gold lead, soul point, Baron, but that seems to be a little bit better for me, particularly because it's all well and good. Zaya has items, has Ornn stats, but how do you hit targets between the cage, between the Azir soldiers? Mervs has only really had one chance to do damage in this game, and credit to him, he actually ended up doing that. But again, it feels like every fight has been X7 just taking advantages without it needing to be explosive.
Yeah, it just feels like, you know, this game is coming down to just execution. It's not, oh, assassins are useless because the damage, like, because of the
played better.
ability. It's just
the angle.
Playing it very smart. Yeah, absolutely. They're trying to hold on for as long as possible, but you are dealing with a team who have so much zone control and a pretty serious amount of siege capability. As the call of the Forge Gods coming down, this might be their moment. They find the knock-up. Ericsson's instantly rooted out. Kasing going very low. Ericsson's going to have to be able to jump away to safety, shield him from Crocs as they're going on for Mervs now. Mervs is all on him, putting the feathers down. MC's losing a lot of health, but the soldiers just answer back from Tempt, and another inhibitor will fall down in the meanwhile. X7, it is just crisp, it is controlled, it is not flashy. It is just superior play, but it's getting them ahead in this game.
And it's actually very impressive to me that they're doing this with a new top laner. Chasey coming in, wasn't here in spring, comes in for this split, and already has been left alone on those side lanes, which can be notoriously hard to play towards. Has that now, has the winning lane matchup, and has now a Flame Horizon over Hesira. Hesira, of course, been in the NLC for such a long time. Chasey making his debut with just a few games in this split. The next 7. Really playing as though they've been playing together for such a long time.
Yeah, very good stuff. Mervs closing in on that Infinity Edge. Still got about 1,500 gold until it's done, so maybe there's a world where that could make some level of a difference for Mervs, but I'm not going to hold my breath. You've got the Shadow Flame and the Luden's Echo onto Ericsson, but on the other side, Death Cap, Everfrost, 13 stacks on the Medjais, Void Staff, Fiendish Codex. I mean, Attila is just enormous right now.
And, you know, credit to him, has as a librarian of Magi's myself, I very much like that item. This Veigar has been so oppressive. It's walking it in with the move speed advantage. That's actually really clever from Attila. Just like, I will run you down if you don't use your ult. Let's see what you got. Now, you actually don't have that sigil to, or rather the mimic, to get the big trades off on this next wave, and it allows them to approach with just a little bit more safety.
Just absolutely no damage coming out, as well as the last inhibitor tower shall crumble here to X7. It's going to be on Vanir to pull off a bloody miracle. Inhibitor number 3 will fall, and the Nexus towers will be the target here for the side of X7. Here comes the call of the forward squad. Hizera needs to make it land. Only onto one they go. They get a little bit of damage off onto MC. A kick comes back, but the cage goes down, and X7 holding on fast right now. Hizera taking a bunch more damage himself, and they all need to just top back up on the health bars, but the towers will pay in the meanwhile. Look at the damage coming out from X7. Mercs has been caught, has to throw the Featherstorm not to get caught as the railgun comes down. There's a lot of feathers on the ground, but they don't connect onto anyone. Attempts to send soldiers forwards. Another cage, another tower, another Nexus will fall to X7. As Vanir, they just fell apart in this game. They had nothing in the tank. Completely clean, completely crisp. The first Gnaw we've seen actually land all game. There's 30 minutes on the clock, and it's just padding the stats. A horrific week 1 for X7. Week 2, they come back with a 2-0. X7 just, it wasn't flashy. It was just better.